The following passage is taken from my newly published work, Reflections on the 2020 Scamdemic. Look in the description for the link to see where you can purchase that publication of mine, either on Kindle or paperback. Mass masking. Brutalism of the human visage. Since maskage was, and still is, political theater, it is worthwhile to consider the sort of aesthetic that mass maskage promotes. How does wearing a surgical mask alter the appearance of a person? One who wears this type of mask is, first of all, effectively rendered depersonalized. A man in a mask effectively looks less human, because that man's expressions, which reveal his human emotions, are hidden. The result is a certain ghastly, ghostly absence of affect. Since the values of our rulers are in many senses homicidally psychotic, as can be described in their oft-stated plans to achieve massive depopulation, I don't deem it very much of a stretch to reckon that an anti-human aspect can indeed be seen as an element of the aesthetic they no doubt wish to promote, one which is achieved by creating a circumstance in which a population is compelled to cover their faces in a manner that compromises that which would display the essence of their humanity, resulting in the imposition of a patently anti-human aesthetic. For those who harbor doubts that our ruling class would go to such lengths to induce misery in the general population, just consider that the style of architecture known as brutalism, which favors the construction of buildings which are intentionally dismal and ugly, has long been heavily promoted and prodigally funded by firmly entrenched establishment sources. Who, possessed of a sane, healthy mind, would believe that an aesthetic like brutalism ought to be promulgated? Yet our elites promote it anyway, which ought to suggest something to us about the types of minds which they possess. When an entire population is masked in this manner, when, that is, wherever one ventures one sees nothing but people covering their noses and mouths with scraps of cloth, one cannot escape a certain grim conviction that one is surrounded by people who are bound and gagged, that the people are significantly unfree, that they are controlled, monitored, kept in line, and forbidden from displaying anything which deviates from the gloomy norm, like, for example, actually showing their faces in public. Mass masking is but another instance of the above-mentioned brutalism, although here the architecture in question is being put on display in people's bodies and on their faces, rather than in the designs of buildings. The brutalist effect, however, is the same: to provoke feelings of misery, disenchantment, demoralization, and powerlessness before the regime which mandates what amounts to their continued captivity and imprisonment. A brute aesthetic, indeed. Finally, let us consider the fact that surgical masks are designed to cover all of the orifices through which one is able to breathe, namely the mouth and the nostrils. If a ruling regime has the power to literally impair or impede people's ability to inhale, which is to say, the power to impair or impede the regulation of involuntary tasks necessary for life, since after all there is no life without breath, then a person is indeed compelled to view the ruling regime as an entity which is constantly choking him, even if only lightly. The inability to breathe well serves as a constant reminder that someone has their metaphorical foot on your metaphorical and literal windpipe, and could conceivably at any moment cut off the life-giving activity, intentionally causing your death. Mass masking, we can thus conclude, in being a contrivedly theatrical project in which symbolic signification is intended to be communicated, is an act of untrammeled hostility perpetrated by the depraved elites upon a mentally enslaved population, in which, under the guise of protection, quote-unquote, the people are sent a message in which their inessentiality, being useless eaters as well as useless breathers, is conveyed, in no uncertain terms, by their homicidally minded rulers.